So we have Chuck Jones here from Jones Coffee. And look at that. Justin Prietto from Huntington Catering. Amongst other things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll start with Chuck. Let's talk about your journey. How did you get here?
Lyft. A lot of mistakes. Basically siphoning all of my siblings' inheritance from my dad, and a lot of second chances.
So where did you start in your journey with coffee for Jones Coffee?
So 25 years ago, I was just getting out of college, and I wanted to start a business with my brother. He was 3 years out of college already, and we were trying to figure out what to do. The job market was really bad, and we thought that maybe this family farm might be a good opportunity to do something. So we put together a business plan, borrowed money from my dad, and bought coffee from my grandfather from our family farm in Guatemala.
Oh, that's the origin. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of how it started.
Okay.
And then I got kind of bored with really low margins of brokering green coffee to other roasters, and I also got bored of just working with a non-finished product. So 3 years after we were doing the green coffee, we bought a roaster and started roasting coffee, and just kept going at it. And our first wholesale.
Is that in Pasadena?
That was inside Soda Jerks. I don't know if you remember Soda Jerks, but Kevin McCafferty.
I do remember Kevin from Foster Ones,
Yeah. Kevin was buddies with John and
right.
Chris, and he used to.
Thank you, John.
And he used to manage the Fair Oaks Pharmacy.
Yep.
And then he started his own ice cream bar called Soda Jerks on Fair Oaks across the street from Central Park. And I bought this roasting machine, and I didn't really know what to do with it or where to start even. And Kevin, I didn't really know him, but I asked him, I begged him if I could rent a 10 by 10 foot space in his front window of his ice cream parlor to roast coffee. Wow. And it was.
Well, I'd like to know too, what does a roaster cost back then, especially?
I bought that roaster for $12,000, and it was a 12-kilo German roasting machine called a Probat L12, and I think today they probably sell them for $30,000.
So they still work?
Oh yeah, they're great. Yeah, those machines last forever.
Awesome. And so you're in wholesale. When did the retail store come into play, or were you still were you brokering? Were you white labeling? How did that happen?
So I was the first phase. It's funny that you asked, because the first phase of the business, I was only doing wholesale, and I was trying to do as much roasting as possible. So I started doing private labeling or co-packing, and I was doing some green, what we call toll roasting, where people would bring me green coffee and I'd roast it. And then the market went up, it jumped up, and I had to raise my prices 50 cents a pound. And all that business walked out on me. So I really should have been out of business at that point, because I was selling a commodity, which is a non-branded product. And then I borrowed more money from my dad, and I kind of reinvented the business just to keep it branded.
So real quick, was your family in business doing other stuff before that, aside from your grandpa being a roaster? Or where did that entrepreneurship come from? Was it handed down from other businesses? Did you learn from them? From your parents?
No, I don't know. I mean, my dad was a doctor, so
okay.
So he was in a different program, and no, I don't know. I mean, but my mom took a lot of risks.
That's cool.
So I don't know.
So you're wholesaling, and we can even fast forward this to now. How much of your business is wholesaling versus retail?
Right now, our business is about 20% retail, 80% wholesale.
Okay. So if someone is listening or someone here in the audience, they want to do their dream is to have a coffee shop, would you give them kind of a startup kit for like a certain price, and they come to you and say, we want to make our own coffee, or we want to buy coffee from you, we want to have a cart? Is there a way for someone to do that?
Well, I mean,
with what you're doing, basically.
Justin's a good example. So Justin and Winston,
The answer's no.
Just in case you didn't hear that through the microphone, Justin said, I got the answer for that, and the answer is no. So, so what I did was, and I would have done this for most anybody, was I went through pro formas and I talked about, you know, operating ratios and kind of, you know, I think one of the biggest pieces of information that I ever got from a mentor was that your rent should be 8% of your projected gross. And when you use that number,
That's good information.
I mean, that's the golden egg right there, because after I learned that, I realized, oh my God, that answers everything, because from that you can back it out to transactions per hour, average ticket prices, then you can work in your labor costs. So just that one number, 8% of your gross sales, means everything. So when I talk to somebody about their idea and I say, well, what's your projected gross sales? And they're like, you know, $100,000 a month. And I said, well, that means that your rent needs to be $8,000 a month. And they said, but no, my rent's $30,000 a month. And I'm like, well, then that's not going to work.
Right.
So
That's a golden nugget right there. Of
it is a
information,
golden nugget.
actually.
Because then when you back it down, you can even just work that number over and over, and you can figure out like, oh, so I need to actually bring in 700 people every hour through that door to cover my rent costs. You know, so if you work the equation the other direction, and you realize, well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
There's something wrong with the equation. It's out of balance.
Right. So go back to the drawing board, start over, figure it out if you can, hopefully.
Maybe the rent's too high, or maybe your average ticket price is too low. You know,
Right.
there's all these other things.
That brings me to this question. What kind of capital do you think is needed for like a startup coffee shop? I'm curious. I mean, I think people might want to know that too. So.
Well, it's interesting because like a full blown out program would probably be $400,000.
Like 1,000 square foot space, or
no, more like 2,500, like a really substantial program.
which is kind of like maybe the storefront here, and
well,
maybe how
no, like Copa Vita.
Okay.
You know, Copa Vita up on Green Street. That was probably, you know, $300,000 or $400,000. That was pretty, you know, smash up job in my opinion. I think they did a great job.
And build out and tiling and floors.
Yeah,
and
everything.
walls
I mean, they went great. They did a great job on that. But I think that you could probably get away with 100 or 150 if you're wise about it. If you're, you know, careful about it.
And if someone was like, I just want to start a cart from the ground up, is there like a number for that? Like, hey, I'm going to go sit on Lake Avenue in Pasadena and.
Yeah, you know, the cart itself is going to be, you know, 20,000, probably around 20, and then, but something that a lot of people don't work in is what they're going to need moving forward in the first 6 months when they're not making any money.
Right.
So if their operating costs are still going to be at, let's say, just say 8% on rent, and then you have, you know, another 10 or 15% on overhead, that's it with zero income for the next 6 months. So you should really be prepared for that the first 6 months of doing nothing, actually going backwards.
Right. So much, yeah.
And that's where people can get ground up, you know, in the startup process.
Or they want to find an investor and think they're going to get a salary for the first 6 months, right?
Yeah. I tried that program. I was like, I
need to be
CEO
paid
and
too.
president first year, and I need my salary. And Dad.
So do you still roast in Guatemala?
No,
or you get the beans there and then you roast here still?
Yeah, we never roasted down there, but we still have the farm, and we still grow coffee, and we buy 10% of our production for Jones Coffee, and then the other 90% we sell mostly to Starbucks.
Where?
I'm surprised he said that.
It's actually, well, Starbucks, you know, to be honest, rewrote the standards of buying coffee at the farm gate, and they set up a way to buy coffee that included premiums if you cared for your people and you cared for your agriculture land, and so they did things that trade organizations could never have been able to do for the coffee industry worldwide on the buying side. Right. So everyone likes to take down the big green giant and everything, but the reality is that I'm kind of a big fan of Starbucks, because if I could offer, you know, benefits to my part-time employees, if I could offer continuing education funding, I mean, there's a lot of things that they do that people, I don't think they give them enough credit for.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys offer medical and stuff like that too, or some
Not
services?
yet,
or, okay.
but we're researching it because we're going to be required at 50 employees, and right now we're at 30. So.
Right. I think having a clear idea of where stuff comes from is definitely what's happening in the space now in a lot of different industries. So I think that's awesome. Let's talk about retail. How many stores do you have now?
We're going to open our fourth one in 2 weeks, and on Aurora Parkway. It's a drive-through next to Lucky Boy.
In front of the storage place?
Home of the breakfast burrito. Somebody says to me today, I said, yeah, it's going to be right next to Lucky Boy. And they said, the home of the burrito place. And I'm like, the what? No, the burrito place. I'm like, breakfast burrito
Someone
place.
said,
and I'm like, yeah, of course, the breakfast burrito place. Because it's not just a burrito place, it's the breakfast burrito place.
I think Justin might agree with that, but I think High Life is actually... So I'm looking for a gift certificate from the owner of High Life, wherever you are. No, I'm just kidding. I've noticed that you go into existing locations when you do retail.
The what?
You go into existing coffee shops. Is that kind of the idea? So you don't have to do build-outs? Or like Roman's Coffee's one?
No,
When you went in there, I'm saying.
They pretty much ripped that out. I mean, the only thing that they left in that place from Zelli's was the soffit, but they left the footprint of the counter. So we use the same footprint of the counter.
But it was an existing coffee shop before.
But it helps.
Right.
Yeah, it helps a lot. Going into an existing place. So people ask me, they say, well, how can I get into a coffee, place at a really, really low TI, tenant improvements? And I said, well, the best is that the place isn't closed yet. Because then you don't have to go through the plan check and everything with the, and all the permits. If you can buy an operating place that's already open, and the best is to buy it when they're down and out, right? You don't want to buy a bustling place. So look for maybe like a donut shop that you think is hurting. Unfortunately, most donut shops aren't hurting, but if you look for a business that's an operating, restaurant that's already operating, then you can buy it as is and then transform it into a coffee place, and you'll save a lot of money that way.
And your locations are located.
Oh, Roman's Bookstore is
in
the second one.
Pasadena, right.
Yeah, and the third one is Buster's location.
South Pasadena Street, yeah.
And then the fourth one would be on Aurora Parkway.
And that's the place that's been there for like 20 years, but in the front of the storage place?
Yeah.
That place is good.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a good place. Yeah, we're gonna
Cool.
have a
Drive-throughs
really great
route.
ordering system to get the people in and out faster.
Another just for people that want to know, what is the ideal loan lease term? Like how long are you committing to? If you're not doing a build out, or if it's kind of already there, or do you go for like 10 years? Do you go for 5 years? Do you go for?
I would stick to 3 or something, around that number. I mean, two or 3, and then on the next round, maybe if things are good, then go for like a 5 and a 5.
Cool. And it took you 20 years to get to this point?
25.
25?
Yeah.
Business takes a long time.
Well, I took longer than most. It shouldn't take that long. I mean,
well,
it really shouldn't. I mean, it really should. There's a black hole of about 10 years there that shouldn't happen with most situations.
I think there's a romantic love affair with entrepreneurship, and these kids try to come out and think that's gonna like make a business super quick, but it really, to have a long-term business is kind of the idea. So I don't know if I think 25 years is, you're doing what you love to do, and you're in your.
Well, people were calling us an institution much earlier than I wanted. It's like the gray hair starts coming in. Someone said, oh, you're an institution. I'm like, that's like Philippe's, French dip sandwiches. That place is an institution, not Jones Coffee.
You look good, man. You look kind of like a cross between like Pierce Brosnan and, no, I'm just kidding. Just some more advice. Is there a tipping point for retail? Like how many stores you could actually roll out? Or are you going to try to roll out? This might be proprietary information, but is it 12? Is it 6? Is it 4? Is it? And you've got kind of the organization to back it up, I think, for a certain amount of stores. But
I'll be happy with 4. I would have been happy with 3. I would have been happy with 2. 1, was kind of frustrating, but having 2 or 3 was good. We're planning to open a lot of stores, and it's gonna, if everything goes right, it's gonna be a little bit crazy. I've kind of prepared the team, but I mean, if things go in the right direction, we'll be doing at least 1 a month for a while.
Wow.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But if
in LA County, or
if none of that happens, I'll be happy with what I got.
Right. Where do you want this to take place? In San Gabriel Valley, East Side Pasadena,
It's
Los
probably
Angeles?
going to be in about 4 or 5 counties.
Wow. So are you franchising?
Something like that. I don't know.
He can't tell
if
us
that's
anymore.
Quite
Yeah.
I
You
don't
could
know.
dodge. Yeah. Delete that. I'm
We'll
just kidding.
see. I don't know.
That's great.
But I'm happy with 4.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the idea really is that those stores act as, for me, our main business is wholesale. And I really think that's the way to go in the big picture is the wholesale program. And the retail's, great for branding. And if I look at the different models of roasting companies around the country, I mean, Intelligentsia did it right. They started with a few retail account businesses, built a brand and then built their wholesale from the brand. And I did it ass backwards. I did wholesale. I couldn't give coffee away. I couldn't even hide it in people's houses and make them, I couldn't do anything to get people to use our coffee. And then as soon as I did our first retail, then everything changed. And then second retail, I feel like everything doubled after that, or tripled or quadrupled. Then the third store, right now, since Buster's, which has only been a few months, the wholesale business has just been kind of blowing up. So in as far as those retail locations are that we're planning to do, they're really to drive the wholesale business.
Right. It's just marketing, basically.
Basically, yeah.
And where I'm seeing this, there aren't a lot of stores that have that many stores or coffee shops that aren't bought by someone else. I'm saying a lot of the guys like the Blue Bottle were bought by someone else.
Sure. There's
I
a
think
lot
when
of.
you get to a certain point, you're pretty much like.
Yeah, there's a lot of industry consolidation. Stumptown and
right.
and
then,
well, Hanson was bought by Blue Bottle,
right. Okay.
and then Blue Bottle was bought by Nestle. Stumptown was bought by Pete's, and Pete's was bought by Jab out of Germany, and Intelligentsia was bought by Pete's, or majorities, and not necessarily 100%, but majorities. So, and that was Jab.
So don't forget about us little people, okay? Is what I'm telling you.
But In-N-Out never sold out.
That's true.
So,
The granddaughter's doing a good job.
I love that model. There's a great book about it's an unauthorized biography of the company of In-N-Out. It's a really small book, so it's an easy read, but it talks about the different growth phases of In-N-Out business, and it's really well done, and I like that model. With the Christian, I like to do In-N-Out without the Christian fundamentalism.
Non-denominational. We get it. Okay, so we're gonna head to Justin, and then we'll be able to do a Q&A after he's done, in case anyone wants to. Justin Prietto.
Nobody here I know? Perfect. Great.
Let's talk about Huntington Catering first. That's what I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your journey and how you got to where you are now with Huntington Catering.
Well, much like Chuck, the idea when you start a business is siphoning your siblings' inheritance. And speaking with my mom about that and realizing I'm an only child, we had to pivot.
I know. I was like, wait, you have siblings?
We had to pivot early in our journey, right? So it's funny that the place we're in right now is on Huntington Drive, and my first business is Huntington Catering, which makes sense because I was catering here, working for my boss, and all sorts of crazy things were happening back in 2007. And I was kind of planning on taking over and bringing my mom, Barbara, into the fold. And that didn't quite work out. So we kind of had to bail. We headed up to a great little spot.
Well, hold on. When you bailed, you were in between trying to take this business over, though, in the beginning, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So then did you have orders already in place or customers during the transition?
Yeah, there were a few key clients that wanted to stick with me. And
so you have clients and you have no kitchen at this point because you decided to leave this where you're at in the beginning.
That's right. Yeah, we didn't have a kitchen. That was tricky.
So then what'd you do?
Well, yeah, we had a couple of clients that came with us, and we had the majority of the staff that wanted to come with us. However, we couldn't really pay for all of them. So we kind of, the people that could afford to come with us did, and we started up. And where was our kitchen when we started out? I forget where our first kitchen was. But we had a tiny little office that had a bathroom attached, and we changed that into a kitchen for tastings. And now it's not even a bathroom at all. It's just a big office. So yeah, so Huntington Catering, that was supposed to be Huntington Catering on this street in this location, was not that. We went up, did our own thing for about 10 or 11 years, and our lease got a little shaky. Things didn't work out as planned, or unplanned for that matter. And I was just ravaging around town looking for a kitchen again, which was a little uncomfortable after thinking that I was established. And a friend of mine, well, we weren't friends, but the guy that took over this place,
In case he's listening.
yeah, he could be. That'd be funny. Mike.
Shout out to Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, where you
Mike's
at?
great. I still get his emails, and he's not one to unsubscribe.
So basically,
Yeah. So
you
get
started a
back to it.
business, but this location you're at now, which we're talking out of, which is Lost Parrot Cafe,
Right.
was taken over by someone else, basically. And
Yeah.
you went somewhere else and started another business, but you kept the name Huntington Catering, which this
Mhm.
location's on Huntington Drive. Okay.
Yeah. So Huntington Catering was based on Huntington Drive, and Henry Huntington, who was a local, badass back in the 20s and 30s that did all sorts of cool shit, and some weird stuff too. But who doesn't? So so we did our thing, and when I needed a kitchen, I was looking all over town, and we squeezed into the Chef Center commissary that we had used previously, but we're overgrown, and it got really, really expensive. So this place, I was emailing Mike, then I was calling Mike, and again, like I said, we weren't really friends. So I started just knocking on the door, and whenever I would drive by and get his attention, and he was finally here, so I caught him. And long story short, we made a deal. He was kind of ready to transition out, so we got the space back. So 11 years later, we came back in. Huntington Catering was back in its place. And it's funny, actually, the asset purchase agreement that I had drafted with my cousin JV in 2007, I pulled out of my email. I sent it to him. I was like, hey, could you cut and paste this into an, so it's the same exact agreement that I used for to take over the other catering company. I really could have edited it myself to save a few dollars, but that's all right. Thanks, JV,
Get
for
paid
the
pizza.
Yeah, JV Hogan, great lawyer if you need one.
What's his website? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know, landshark.com, something like that. Yeah, so we're back. Yeah.
So what about, as someone who wants to go on the journey with you from the past,
You're on
There
the
was
journey
some-
with me.
I've been
Let
on
me
the
tell you
journey
about the
with you.
job I had before I started catering. It wasn't working out. Battle of the bands, bars, and this and that. Oh, that's right, you were there.
I was there.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun,
That was fun.
but I needed a real job.
That'll be
Yeah.
another conversation. So
Season 2.
the obstacles starting out, how did you come up with the capital to support? This is a big deal because you have a big catering company. So
Yes.
and then you had to buy vans, and you had to buy equipment, and you had to buy
Right.
chafing dish.
Yeah, the capital came from the capital majority shareholding partner, which is my mom, Barbara. Hi, Mom.
Which is a huge thing. I think.
Just when the condo was almost paid off.
She asked me how much rent you were supposed to pay, and I told her, and then you started a catering company. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That's a true story.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so the capital came from within, from family, a lot like Chuck. And at the time, I don't know what I was thinking,
Which is phenomenal. You're so lucky. Both you guys.
I'm not known for overthinking. Yeah, but at the time, it just seemed like, yeah, we got to do this. Let's do it. And she took a huge leap of faith, and so we did it. But the buying vans and trucks and all that didn't come till later because I could not decide. I just wanted the perfect catering van, and I wanted it to be awesome, and I procrastinated forever. And now I'd rather rent. We have a couple of vans and trucks, but U-Haul's such a good deal.
And your mom actually works with the company still.
Yeah,
Do
she's
your
working
parents
right
work
now.
with you, Chuck?
My mom's in there every day.
That's really
Work-
interesting, isn't it?
Working with your mom is the best.
That's pretty rad. There's always cookies.
It's so
Milk.
good.
Just left.
Everyone should do it. That's
Well-
actually a common thread that Chuck and I get to chat about.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Just
intense.
you and the mom.
It's not so bad.
Yeah, it's good. It is. It really is nice.
Well, I think you're both blessed to have that opportunity, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then how did you scale from like you, your mom, and like your friends to actually having employees and staff and being able to show up? And was it all friends and you're texting people like?
Yeah, the scaling, the first 3 or 4 years was slim, you know, because you do whatever you want to get customers and say yes. And actually, early on, we did a job at the Arroyo Vista Inn, just above Chuck's house, and you know what we do is food, beverages, service, and equipment rentals, tables, chairs, all that kind of stuff. But early on, you know, you say yes to too much stuff. So we ended up building a subflooring with plywood and AstroTurf because they have concrete lattice there, and just completely bit off more than we could chew. And that was kind of like the standard of just doing way too much. It was myself and Joseph actually bought a ton of plywood, bought a ton of H clips that, if you know what those are, they clip the plywood together. And I remember telling him, we'll just knock this out in a couple hours. And it was a day and a half of all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of, I guess that's a type of marketing, but the scaling just kind of came with time, and it was really rushed at the beginning, and I felt like it had to be a certain size, and everything that I was trying to create was modeled off of what I knew, which was this other, you know, quagmire of a catering company that did things. Yeah. And it took that break from the catering company for me to look at things differently and see what other people were doing and these cool brands and, you know, LA and all that kind of stuff. So the scaling came with time, and the challenge with that scaling is, I think, when it drops off, there's the expansion, which is fun and exciting, and when things kind of get smaller, that's when the experience and wisdom is tested, and you gotta
Plus, you're
make
kind
more
of
challenging
catering is
decisions.
sort of, when you do weddings, it's kind of a seasonal business.
It's seasonal, and what I usually tell people is it's like a spiked graph. It's slow, then bam, Saturday or every other Saturday. And so in that sense, you have to know a lot of people that understand that seasonality and are ready to work a 12-hour day once in a while, and they're in school or they're in a band or they're kind of part-time, and you really lean on that willing and seasonal skilled worker, because it's not like, well, it kind of is something that almost everyone can do, but you can't bet on that. You need like 75% of the people on the team to really know what's going on, and then the other can kind of come along and learn. But if it's the opposite, then it's a disaster, and someone hits a tree or the food comes out late, and then it's
True
expensive.
stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
then you decided, I want to start other businesses to kind of coincide with the businesses that you're in, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
So that would be like staffing and
The second business was a taco cart catering company that actually came from another family member who was, you know, looking for an operator. So we set up another business, which was really the same service, but cleaned up and really, really tight, which I admired because it was just tacos, like what's going on outside right here, actually. Just tacos, a taco cart, 50 people, 100 people, tacos, beans, rice, and very, very narrow and identified, rather than what I was doing, which was food and bar and plywood, AstroTurf floors and all this kind of stuff. So that appealed to me to kind of minimize things, and it worked out for a while. It worked out, and there were a few other opportunities that came and we took advantage of along the way. We did a bartending company where we bought a liquor license that had a very unique element to it, which allows us to pull ABC licenses for off-site jobs, set up cash bars and all that kind of stuff, get involved with fundraisers and all that stuff.
and
So
for people that don't know, who are some of your clients?
for Huntington Catering,
Huntington Catering, IndieBag,
it's interesting for Huntington Catering, the clients are in a sense temporary, because people get married and then it lasts forever and they're happy and they never come back, mostly. But so our clients are lots of weddings, lots of corporate, fundraisers and all that. But the relationships we have are more with venues and event planners and vendor relationships that kind of stretch over the years, and we lean on them and they lean on us, and it works out. So the word client, when I began to understand that, the word client kind of changed, and everyone's a little bit of a client, one way or the other.
Right.
But like Tom's, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Some of the clients that you've worked with, like.
Yeah. So we did a lot of work
K-Rock,
with
Tom's,
not
Beats by
K-Rock
Dre.
yet. Well, yeah. So we got in the beginning days of independent beverage, Tom's actually called or emailed Huntington Catering because Anna Maria Munoz, who went to high school with us, worked there, and it's like, oh, I know a guy that caters, and they wanted to get a happy hour program set up. At that time, I just started independent beverage with my cousin Joseph, and so I was like, all right, great, happy hour, there you go. And they came as a every Friday afternoon happy hour at their office. It was awesome, cool. We quickly got jaded with that like amount of exposure and everything else. And then it dropped off, and we learned our lessons and not get too committed. But then Beats by Dre did come along, which was great. So we had like Tom's one week, Beats by Dre the other week, and we were back and forth, and it was really, really cool.
I mean, those are gigantic clients. So.
Yes,
Yeah.
they were great. And that was right around the time when we had, Joseph had, not me, Joseph had a kegerator in his office. I think you remember those days.
Joseph,
They were short-lived.
did you do a cake stand?
No, I can't do
Okay.
cake stands.
Sure.
But then Apple bought Beats by Dre, and Tom's moved, and that dried up pretty quickly. So we learned to kind of adjust with that, which is the other side of scaling that I think should be highlighted just as much as growing, because it shows up unexpected from time to time.
Because
and it's
clients aren't always permanent in your business, basically.
right,
Yeah.
or in any business, I think, yeah.
I
It's-
mean, less in Chuck's, more in yours.
Well,
say.
yeah. I don't know what the ratios are, but I think the scaling up is what a lot of books and magazines and podcasts are about. The scaling down is
That's so true.
is eventual, and you learn a lot more because it's scary and serious and all that kind of stuff. And then ideally you kind of survive and figure it out for the next round.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question is, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a catering company right now?
A catering company in particular?
I mean, a chef, a college student, someone who wants to come out of their
My first piece of
Kitchen.
advice would be to team up with me, and we'll work through it together.
because you have software too you're working on, right?
Yeah, I do. We've been developing a custom piece of software that specializes in all the things that we do and saving lots of time and efficiencies and all that. But my advice to somebody that would start a catering company would be to decide to go very, very deep in one avenue.
You
And
mean
that-
food or
Avenue of
Particular
food,
food
avenue
or-
of food or specialty.
the type of food? Okay.
The type of food, because the companies I see that I admire from afar are very, very specialized in one area, and they do it really, really well, and people go to them for that particular thing, and they're not overwhelmed and diluted with plywood subflooring and thinking that you can knock it out in an afternoon with your
Right.
cousin when that's
or
just
they
not
can
the
work out of
case.
the commissary or their kitchen or
The commissaries, yeah, that is actually something that's more available now than ever before. There's four or five that I could think of off the top of my head, and that's a perfect bridge to just having a kitchen when you need it, and not, biting off a 3-year lease with, all right, now you have to cater events. And if you're in a commissary where you can get in and get out, you can perform when you need to, and pay rent when you need to, and not take a lot of jobs that you wouldn't want to because it's not your specialty. Now you're doing this and that, and it's not really something you're passionate about. So sticking really deep
secure
with
narrow
like,
lane.
yeah, the tacos or the pizza or the foie gras, whatever, craft cocktails is what I would suggest, and not associating debt with a necessary element of business. I think early on it could be avoided if you're really, really strict about it. Yeah.
Right. And also, I was telling someone earlier, it's never been easier to start a business in the
Yeah.
last couple years than it ever. I mean, wouldn't you agree? Right. I mean, the principles are the same as start a business, but having all the free platforms like social media and stuff like that to get your name out there has never been easier.
Yeah, printing business
So I would
cards
say start. That's that'd
Yep.
be my advice, and then
start and maybe try to read and expose yourself to a lot of the challenging aspects and stories, and we didn't make it because, rather than the really fun
business is
Dr.
beautiful,
Dre
let's
and
do a
Jay-Z
cartwheel.
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are fun too. I mean, that's kind of like that's cardio. You got to have that as well. But the challenging stories and the ones you don't really want to look at is the deadlifts and steel that isn't going to move unless you make it.
Last thing, I lied when I said last question.
That's cool.
So now we're at Las Perras Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
Your business is ran out of the back. Your office is ran out of the same place, and you've got a coffee shop / restaurant.
Right.
How's that?
I think in the moment it lacks definition, which is a conversation that Chuck and I had recently. I need to let the customers know exactly what it is. We have Taco Tuesday, we have Sunday brunch, we have a cafe during the week that closes at 3. So we're working on defining that for our locals and our customers, and but it's going good, I think.
But
I enjoy
just
it.
having this is amazing to me.
It's great. Yeah, the one thing that I wasn't really counting on, because this template or this plan is more or less something that I pulled off the shelf, dusted off, and said, okay, now I'm going to do it. I'm not doing it in 2007. I'm doing it in 2018. So that's kind of weird. But one thing I wasn't counting on that I should have seen coming was the feeling of just people being in the space and kids strollers and people feeling like they could just walk in with their dog for whatever reason. And a lot of the feeling that I got,
you got a lot of neighbors here.
Yeah. And the feeling I got sitting at Jones for many years, reading a book, and now I don't read anymore.
Let's face it, you had the same page open for like 2 years.
Yeah. But that,
I always tell them that.
that feeling of having people around that are in a good mood and talking about whatever or having a serious conversation has done something to kind of bond our handful of companies together, and I didn't count on that, but I'm happy it's happening, and I'm happy that it's going to slowly start growing as our little anchor on
another
the south
exciting
side
venture.
South side of South Pasadena.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions or
Q&A.
for Justin or Chuck?
Justin.
Okay.
So we also, my sister and I, we own a Japanese rice ball company. We started,
South Pasadena Farmers Market.
Yes.
No way, that's you?
Yeah.
What's it called again?
Alamasubi.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's a Japanese rice ball company.
Oh, those are so good. The teriyaki chicken one too. I love that. So it's Mama Subi. The question, he has a question. It's Mama Subi. Mama Masubi is
Did I hear
the
that you
business.
were going to be hosting a pop-up at the Lost Parrot Cafe? Is that?
Yeah, just happened just now.
I don't know. Did I recently hear that? Like really, really recently? Okay. Good.
Fresh news.
Cool. All right. I heard
Why
a
don't you
rumor.
come up here? Come sit right here. You're off camera, but at least you don't have to yell. Otherwise, I'll repeat it all.
So we don't. My sister Carol over there.
I recognize you too. I was like, okay.
I hang out at Jones all the time.
So
Thanks for the salmon balls.
oh, thank you for coming by. We're actually really close by your new shop.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Buster's, right? Yeah. So, we started this company quite some time ago. No food experience, but we.
The product's delicious, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so we were very cautious about the overhead and the finances. So we only did events to start with, and we were, to what you were saying, very focused, very narrow, because that's really our skill set was so limited. And then we did one event, and then 2 events, and then we're now at like 6 farmers markets, and we just recently also opened up in Kitchen United in Pasadena, which is kind of like a hybrid.
Is that the delivery?
It's like it has a retail component, but it also has deliveries like Uber Eats, Grubhub, E24 as well.
Is it Langer's out of there?
Cantor's.
Or Cantor,
Yes.
excuse me. Yeah.
Cantor's out of
yeah.
there. So that was actually our first like brick and mortar. So right now we're in a place where we're trying to think about how do we expand, right? So we really like doing the events in the farmers market because, to your point, we didn't have a crazy overhead.
But that's also marketing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so
I mean, huge marketing, right?
Huge. That's something that we didn't do on purpose, but just
Right.
by accident we realized.
I mean, we all probably have been there, especially this whole group over here. We definitely have been there, and it's delicious.
Yeah, so we didn't. That wasn't our intent, but what we learned from it, especially because you were talking about the social media part of it, because we're in so many different locations, we ended up getting a lot of followers. We ended up getting a lot of people that asked us for the past few years, when are you guys gonna have a location? When are you guys have a location? And we just are a little bit more risk adverse, so we just, and plus we didn't have a huge financial backing, so everything that we made, we put back in the business, and growing organically is very hard.
As you should, and it is hard. But yeah,
It is hard, and so we didn't want to have to borrow money, and we didn't want to be burdened with that debt. So we were fortunate enough, but also through a lot of hard work, we're able to save up some money and get into KU. But KU in itself, the way they structure that was that the kitchen's already built. You just need to put in some
Right.
equipment, and your monthly is a little bit higher, but at least you can do that. So now we're thinking about the next step, right? Now that we have all these events, people are asking us, where can we, get your stuff? We have a lot of people that ask us for catering, but we cannot even fulfill it just because we just don't have the capacity to do it.
Out of Kitchen United, really?
Well, just labor-wise.
Oh yeah.
Just labor-wise, it's like for example, Sunday, we have 14 people working on Sundays, right? Because we have 2 markets that we do. And so it's hard, oftentimes on weekends, we get requests for catering, and we're like, everybody's working. Like, who's gonna be able to make the catering? And so we're stuck in this funny place where it's going well, but it's hard to go to the next step. And so for something like what we're doing, what are some advice that you would, suggest for us?
I think both of you guys should answer that.
Yeah. It's challenging for me to answer that because I don't know where you want to end up and what you really want to do with your time. I think being cautious with how much you extend yourself is a really, really great trait, and it's not something that I harbored until maybe 5 or 6 minutes ago. So defining first what you want to do with yourself and your team and your unit moving forward, and saying we want to do, I don't know, this much a year, this many events, or we want to feel like this when we're serving our customers, because you can easily go from handing something that you're into, that has the right margins and everything else, and somebody saying, wow, thanks, eye contact, all these kinds of things, to expanding it to where, there's a certain point when you don't have eye contact with your end user that it changes. There's like I don't know, I'm not sure how to describe that. But so starting with first where you want to end up next year, 5 years, whatever, because you can learn a lot from your customers, and you of course have to listen to your customers and inquire and send out forms if you can to get that data, because it's valuable. That's who's paying for it. However, I think there's a disconnect between that information that we seek from our clients and customers and what we should actually do. Because customers are always going to want more, and they're going to want more of your product. They're probably going to want more of you, more of your time, and sometimes scaling up your minutes and hours a day doesn't quite compute, and then you get spread thin, and your structure, your bone structure can't take the weight, and that's uncomfortable. So yeah, it's a pretty good question, Dodge, but it's figuring out where you want to go first. And if you keep saying no to events, that demand isn't gonna disappear.
That's good advice.
You like growing up. Where'd you grow up? Temple City.
Yeah.
Temple City High.
Yeah.
Man. All right.
You guys were good
So,
at football. I'm just kidding. Temple
so
City
I-
high school football rules.
So I imagine growing up. I went South Pass High. He's a Titan. So you were said no to once or twice in adolescence, and that didn't make you want her any less, right? So there's a little bit of that. It might sound immature, but staying on one side of that demand is great. On the other side, I think it gets slippery, and you can kind of get pushed down that hill, and then you're being pushed by your demand, and it's kind of like driving a forklift really, really fast. You twitch once, and then you're in the other direction. So staying in control of the demand that's out there can be a really comfortable place if you kind of have a good foundation, and then say, all right, we want to grow 5%, 15% a year, and we're going to say no to some people, but we're going to say it gracefully, and we're going to say thank you for your interest, and they're going to be on our email list, and they're going to know about what's happening next, and then when we have space on the calendar, they'll be stoked. Yeah.
I think scaling up using his services might be a separate conversation also.
Oh yeah.
With the
Oh, yeah.
no, I'm just saying, like, being able to, because that's kind of what you do as well. So
Yeah,
that's
we
probably-
actually, one thing, a mistake that we made over the years is saying yes to lots of events, and we do all sorts of it. Last week we did an event with In-N-Out, and they're very strict at admiring that business model of they don't do French fries on site because they don't want the liability, they don't want this and that. So we'll fill in the blanks sometimes and do the bar, the service, French fries, and salads or whatever. So yeah, we have been in that situation where we can kind of insulate the event around the specialty. And on our side, it's great because we get to see some cool different food. You know, we get to see our servers get a kick out of it, and I enjoy. There's a few companies, Park's Finest and Olivewood Pizza, and a handful of Koji. Early on, we did a lot of stuff with Koji. It has not been said that we're responsible for Koji being so famous, because we're not. But
did stuff with them before them. What do you mean?
just that they're specializing in what they're doing out of that truck, and we did everything around that for the event, the staff, the service, and all that, because everything that's not your specialty dilutes what you're really about.
and stuff and time.
In certain cases, I don't want to say that you shouldn't consider other stuff, but that's been my experience. So yeah, we could certainly kind of team up on a couple things, and
I want to hear what Ken has to say.
yeah.
I would focus on what you're good at. The brick and mortar is tough on a single product. Then you do that 8% thing, you work it backwards. You look at what your average transaction price is. I'm sure you already got plenty of data on that. If you're using any kind of POS system, you know what your data is telling you. I would focus on the not discounting your main products ever. One of my mentors told me that we never offer any discounts on anything. We just remind everybody how great it is that we have. And that was Joe Cologne from Trader Joe's. And he also told me that he told me so many things. I think that your product would be really great as a grab and go product, that you could scale it out that way, and it would help alleviate some of the pressure that you have on your high peak times, like on the weekends.
Right.
I don't know if you're going to sell more product with that kind of impact on the weekdays unless it is a grab to go product. You're going to run into other kind of problems on the grab and go, which is going to be packaging requirements and supply chain management, because a lot of the companies that are buying UPC coded products require different levels of. So our programs that we have with the Whole Food markets require a lot of third-party certifications, which makes it more complicated. But at the same time, that's what you're good at.
Yeah.
You're good at those core products, and if you have like those 5 or 10 core products, I've seen a lot of failures where people get distracted by things that they think are going to help their sales, and they end up realizing that those low margin areas are what are dragging down the business, and the reality is that you have less fun doing it. So is it scalable? I think your product is scalable. I mean, that wasn't really the question, but that was the thing that I was thinking about was how to make it scalable, right?
One of the areas we're talking about is actually drop-off catering that we think would be a great opportunity.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah. No, that's all I had to say.
You know,
I
one of
just
you
wanna
know,
hear your thoughts.
one
He
of my,
said drop-off catering is a
Yeah.
good idea.
So one of my friends,
Big breakthrough.
Julie Campoy from Julienne in San Marino, when her mom was alive, who started the Julienne, Julie kind of came in and her mom said, well, you need to figure out your own thing. Okay. And at the time her mom was diagnosed with her first bout with cancer. And so she cut catering completely from Julienne, and she only had, because handling the staff was too much stress for her when she was going through the cancer. And so she had only pickup, and then Julie started her own business off at Julienne called Julienne To Go, which was basically that. And then she would use temp services to put together, parties for other people to handle themselves, and then kind of cut out the whole, like using like your staffing services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again,
Infomercial?
yeah. But no, I think that's a great idea.
www. No, I'm sorry.
But I think that figuring out like what your shelf life is, maybe getting into some finding out a food scientist that can do some testing on your products and figure out how to make your products more stable with keeping the quality high enough is going to give you a much more. Have you been to any of the trade shows to see what products that might be comparable?
I've been to a lot of trade shows. When you say comparable to my product,
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen anybody that is specifically in my niche of light bulbs.
He's humble.
No, I just haven't.
Well, I mean, so for example, I would start at the raw section at Whole Foods. I would see who's selling in the raw section of Whole Foods and look at what kind of if they have any kind of because I know Whole Foods requires a lot of third-party oversight for their products. So if you took the raw foods and you say, okay, because in worst case you're basically selling a raw product, right?
What do you mean?
Well, because of the risk level, potential risk level. So
we don't have any. Ours they're cooked.
I know it's cooked, but that's I'm just saying it's a good place to start because you're going to want your product to be as fresh as possible,
Yes.
right? You don't want people hanging on to it for 5 days,
No.
okay? And so neither does the raw people. They don't want anybody hanging on to their product for 5 days. And if they do have it for 5 days, in Whole Foods, like we have 30 days on our product, but Whole Foods not convinced us. They required us to put 90 days, which changed a lot for me because that means that I had to say, okay, so we're going to compromise our freshness for 90 days. That's 3 times worse than what my standard is. Okay, so but what I had to do was I had to figure out how can I make sure that works properly. So I go in and police my own stuff to make sure it's rotating properly and stuff like that, which is a pain in the ass. I mean, I really don't make any money from Whole Foods. I really don't.
It's for the exposure.
I'm just
just
hanging.
selling us
I'm
that.
hanging on to the Amazon, purchase. I'm hoping that jumping through all these loops, someday
Coffee
it's
Bean, are you
gonna
listening?
pay off. But I would look at the raw packaging programs and see what kind of third-party certifications they have in shelf life and freshness, and that would for me I feel like that would make it scalable because you could be running a wholesale manufacturing on 2 or 3 shifts a day of just blowing product out and focus on the brand.
Yeah. Okay.
But single store brick and mortar, I don't think it would pencil out
Yeah.
because you'd have to sell shitloads of those salmon balls. I'll buy a lot, but
Hey, thanks for coming. Here's your $20, man. Last thing I'm gonna say is that I think to get to where you guys are at, to 8 farmers markets, most people would already kill to just be where you're at. Because the waiting list to be at South Pass is like non-existent, right? Yeah. So you're already in an amazing place, but I think they gave you good advice too. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Come on up, man.
This better not be a rice ball question.
I'm out of money, so here you go.
Hi guys, thank you. This question is actually for Chuck. It's actually a 2-part question. Sorry. So sorry, Chuck. How do you maintain your consistency of your product to your wholesale clients that serve your coffee to their customers? And do you require them to follow your brewing standards, coffee to water ratio, serving their customers?
Okay, so this is one of the reasons why we're looking at opening more retail stores is because of lack of control. You guys are great. Lost Parrot's freaking phenomenal. But a lot of times I have to compromise my standards by, like, for example, we supply lemonade, and nobody buys coffee at lemonade at all those units. The owner's a friend of mine. He's always like trying to figure out like how he can make it work. We've been working on 6 satellite stores with a breakfast and coffee program, San Francisco, San Diego, and it's I'm just sitting there, I'm all, this is just not what we're about. Like, I had to change the brew coffee to water ratios. I had to go to super automatic machines. I'm just like, is this really? Fortunately, they're going to cut the whole program.
Right.
Okay, they just decided recently that this is not going to work. But going through that whole process, like, I had to compromise a lot of my integrity of what I was trying to do, and the frustration that I have with places where they don't do the same standard. I mean, I think they're great questions. So the question specifically was, how do I deal with it?
Yeah. How do you maintain, that product?
It's a constant battle. Like, our consistency is one battle where we're buying coffee, we're roasting it, we're blending it, it's an organic product, not organic certified, but an organic, like, it's a food product. So we're always working on trying to get it, buying and roasting and supplying as consistent as possible. But that's only one part of it. When someone says, oh yeah, I had Stumptown over there the other day and it was awful, I just think to myself, I know Stumptown coffee's good.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that.
Right.
And you always had the coffee on the face, right? When you could grind it wrong, you could store it wrong, you could use the wrong water, you could use the wrong brute coffee to water ratio.
Sure.
There's so many things you could do wrong, and it's no fault of Stumptown.
Right.
It's no fault of
User error.
so many things.
Right.
Like, it's such a small part of it. We had this thing when it comes to espresso-based beverages. It's called the 4 M's, and that's, and it's Italian, but I'll just paraphrase it in English, which is basically the hand, the mano. Mm-hmm. The hand that makes the coffee. So the labor is 25%. The machine, the espresso machine, is 25%. The grinder is 25%, and the beans are 25%. And all of those are equally important. Okay, so it's like 4 wheels on a car. They're all 25% of value, right?
Right.
So of that, only 25% of 100% is the beans itself. There's 75% opportunities just to totally screw it up.
I see.
So it's frustrating.
Yeah. I can.
And the idea that we can open all these stores, I look at those as being wholesale accounts that I have complete control over.
Did you ever think about making that a requirement before they purchase your beans, especially on a large scale like lemonade or Busters and things like that? My brother. I mean, I know you don't want to scare anybody away, but
no, right? You don't want to scare anybody
Right.
away. And then there's the other people who just come and say, "Do you have umbrellas?"
Yeah.
I mean, or do you have like? I just want branded cups and umbrellas. And I'm thinking to myself,
Yeah.
well, do you drink coffee? And normally they don't.
Right.
So I'm just like, what am I doing here?
Right.
And so, you don't want to scare them away. And I was thinking about doing something where after 25 years, I'm finally thinking of ideas, right? So I was thinking about doing something where we do a quality audit, like a 6-step quality audit once a month, and they get some sort of rebate.
Sure.
But we charge more, and they get a rebate if they follow the quality audit, or if they use certain types of equipment. Like, I've seen other companies do that too. But
what about your personal relationship, your PR with the companies that you have, though? Is that just something that we experience, or is that something you do with all the people that you supply beans to locally, at least?
Well, I try to keep it as personal as possible. Yeah.
So me going to your locations, mainly the one off of Raymond, I think it is, it's by far the best I've experienced out of the Jones name. But when I've gone to another restaurant, it's, sorry to say, but disgusting.
You said restaurant. Tell them about that.
Okay. First of all, just so you know, the Buster's location, the Mission Street location, has better water.
Okay.
You got to check it out. It's phenomenal.
Okay.
South Pass water. Here at Lost Parrot, the South Pass water is amazing.
RO? No.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
we do. Yeah, we actually both locations do RO and
Perfect.
remineralizing, but still the base water is better here. Pasadena buys water from other municipalities, and so it's always changing, and South Pass doesn't. But the wholesale accounts, so for example, Green Street, okay, love them to death. But if they're slow, they're not rebrewing. They're not rebrewing every 30 minutes. McDonald's and Starbucks are brewing their rebrewing coffee, dumping coffee
30
every 30
minutes.
minutes. And if I tell our wholesale customers, hey, look, you should be dumping this every 30 minutes, and they're like, but it's still hot
Right.
or warm. I'm all.
Yeah.
Do you drink coffee?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. And I said, well, Starbucks and McDonald's is throwing it away every 30 minutes. Do you want to be better than them?
Right.
But I don't think that most restaurants are going to dump it. We
No.
get most of our complaints both
We'll keep it on the burner for
on the
a
wholesale
while.
side and the retail side. We get most of the complaints is when it's slow. And when it's slow, either the staff is distracted because there's a shift change or something going on, or
There's no rotation.
there's no fresh coffee,
Right.
or nobody's calibrated on the grinder or anything like that.
Great.
Did I answer your question?
That's perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Anyone else? I think this will be the last. Oh, we got two.
I just want a question. When can we franchise?
Oh.
I heard that.
Do you have $7 million?
You did
That's
say
a steal.
we, right?
It's
We,
actually
like,
it's actually just 4 million. It's just 4 million. It's not 7.
What you got, man? Come on up. Oh, he's got his iPhone out and everything.
Well, I'll balance it out a little bit and pitch one to you here, Justin. So you you alluded to you're talking about a lot of what a lot of books and articles and pods are talking about is scaling up. So what lessons, both fiscal as well as in regards to HR and the other challenges that come with scaling down, do you want to tell us about?
Yeah. The biggest challenge with scaling down is firing people or cutting hours or however you want to label it.
But it's necessary.
Yes, sometimes it is, and it's the most uncomfortable, but it's one of those decisions that is, there's, you think of like a spreadsheet and a person, and we're people, we go to the person side as frequently as we can, and we have been doing that for, depending on what you believe, millions of years, right? And so there's an equation in that spreadsheet. If you click on the one tab and go in, scroll, at the bottom of one of those spreadsheets means you make a decision between the people that are going to be around or everyone that's going to be around, because in a matter of time, you run out of money and nobody's around. So that's one of the little stories that I've been telling myself about scaling down. The other, I've been thinking about this a lot because we've been doing some scaling down. But the other elements are, it's almost like an unused muscle group where you look at the basics and you look at a minimalistic approach to what you need to do. And in catering in particular, you have to get there, do the job, tables, chairs, food, ice, alcohol, all that kind of stuff. You can't really scale down a service for one Saturday. So you get really, really creative and understand that you can perform at a high level with either different tools or less tools, less people, different people, all that kind of stuff. And you realize that there's so many solutions out there and so many solutions on top of the fact that every situation that you're going through scaling down, which is, foreign and less active in our kind of phenomenal Los Angeles economy that's like weird, right? It just keeps going up for the most part. A big thing that I try to remind myself is any challenge we have or I have or the companies have isn't all that special and unique. Somebody else has dealt with that challenge and either accomplished something or failed, and it's usually documented, or it's a friend that can tell a story like, oh, I kind of dealt with it like this. Maybe not the exact same, but nothing's all that original when it comes to failure, and you can pull a lot of information out of other people's failures or your own past failures. Like, oh yeah, this kind of happened, and we dealt with it like that, and you really get extremely creative, and there's a certain amount of pleasure that's derived from that, and a feeling of accomplishment that's, I guess a survival of, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So is part of the software about automating some of these things that
Did you pay
No, the software is, that's a tough one. The software takes a lot of elements a lot of mistakes that we've made and kind of pulls a company from using spreadsheets, Google Sheets, Google Docs, all that kind of stuff, and just puts it to the next level of a couple of steps before you're, having a magic wand and creating your own catering enterprise software. So puts together a lot of budgets for you. It forecasts a lot of sales for you. It allows you to put together quotes really quickly and effectively. And what we try to do with computers, what I think most of us try to do with computers, is automate absolutely everything that's not our own human creativity and Picasso or whatever. Anything that can be automated should be, and controlled and measured. Therefore, the more stuff that's automated equals more stuff that is, the cool tacos that Gina did today, or the awesome margaritas that Micah's putting out. The computers can't do that yet. So yeah, the software's a little different in that sense. But I'd be happy to, show it to you sometime.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Let's give Justin
Thank you.
a round. Next Tuesday, come back.